breaking barriers and bridging the gaps between patients and doctors. Welcome to Brainstorming with the Docs and your co-hosts, Dr. Glenn Harrison and Dr. Kolby Condos.
All right, everyone, welcome back to this week's episode of Brainstorming with the Docs. I'm Dr. Kolby Condos, my good friend and co-host, Dr. Glenn Harrison. What's up, buddy?
I'm doing well. How are you this evening?
Good, man. This topic is one that I think that both of us deal with very regularly. I think that it's something that is asked of us both pretty commonly. And I think that it's going to be interesting to take it from not only our perspective, but when we were starting to outline this podcast a little bit, to look at it from the patient's perspective as well, because I think that removing ourselves from the equation and taking a step back and kind of looking at what this means for the patient was really invaluable for us. So we're going to talk about burnout amongst patients. And do you feel like you have too many doctors, or do you feel like you're not being listened to? So yeah, we're going to dive right into that. If this is your first time watching or listening to the podcast or telecast and you get value out of this content and information, please hit like and subscribe, turn on notifications, and keep tuned in, because we're going to continue to roll out new information each and every week.
Yes.
So yeah.
So Dr. Kolby, why is getting burnt out from too many doctors a thing? Why is it important?
Well, I think it's important because it's very real. I think that you and I can understand this because we see, I think that patients and people in the public generally kind of understand this as well, but I think it's more prevalent than people know. I think that people don't really realize how many people feel abandoned or feel like they aren't on the right track, or that they feel like no one's listening to them. And you and I realize it because we hear it all day long, every day from multiple people. So I think that it's important because it's very real. It affects a lot of people. We hear it from a ton of our patients. And I just felt like, we've both felt like this is something that maybe we needed to address and let people know that this is actually like a real thing. Exactly
right. I think you and I are both dealing with similar cases where there's chronic illness, someone suffering for 20, 30 years. Well, I've seen that. It's always on the calendar. I know you as well. And if someone's dealing with chronic illness in our Western world for 20, 30 years, they've been through a gauntlet of endocrinologists, gastroenterologists, immunologists, cardiologists, the PCP, then everything in the kitchen sink, on top of that. And it's just, it gets bad enough. It's a full-time job going to doctor's appointments and waiting for doctors and getting diagnoses and doing paperwork. And if they're not getting the answers they need or conflicting answers, it creates absolute chaos. It leads to massive frustration, right? That's one thing. And then not all the doctors are communicating. In fact, very seldom does it ever happen, which we'll talk about. But so if you have a bunch of conflicting opinions about the symptoms or the disorder that the individual is dealing with, and that individual gets this story and this story and this story and that story, and none of them are together, they feel absolutely lost and they lose confidence. And then I think when they lose enough confidence in it, if they are asked to do anything, well, then if you don't have confidence in what you're doing, why are you going to do it? So naturally, there's going to be less compliance. You might start missing appointments. You might say, oh, no, this medication isn't working. You might, oh, this isn't working. So then you get completely removed and you become feeling a sense of feeling jaded. Then what are some other things that, would lead to this? I did mention abandonment.
Yeah.
Well.
Like you talked about, like the frustration, the lack of confidence, and then complacency or lack of compliance. And then they lose trust within the providers, right? That you could have the best, functional neurologist, functional medicine practitioner, endocrinologist, whatever, in the world. But if they don't trust you, then they're not going to do what they tell you, or, they're not going to do what you tell them. And I feel like more than anything, and I actually, and this happens to not only patients, but actually providers too. This happened to me a couple weeks ago. When there isn't continuity within the care, right? When, you don't have, this guy isn't talking to this guy, isn't talking to this girl, isn't talking to her, isn't, if it's not, I like to say one hand isn't washing the other, right? If not everyone knows what everyone's doing, then there's no congruency and continuity within the care. I had this with another provider where I sent out a referral because I was concerned about some findings. The provider saw the patient. I waited and waited for the note to come back. Never came back. Finally, the patient called. Oh, I had that visit like a month and a half ago. Like, well, why didn't, I sent the referral out. Why didn't the note come to me? Or at least, a letter or something telling me what the findings were and what their thoughts were. So it happens on both sides. It is a little frustrating for both people because you lose that continuity within your care. And then when that ultimately happens, I mean, I can tell you how this particular patient felt after, she'd been seen a month and a half prior and I hadn't even realized that she'd had her visit. She felt like abandoned. She was very angry. She was angry at the provider. She was angry with me, rightfully so, that I hadn't followed up sooner with that provider to make sure that she had gotten in. So yeah, I mean, there's a lot of issues. This is a very real thing.
Yeah. And that sense of feeling defeat, when there's all these different diagnoses and explanations and there's no consistency, and then the providers aren't able to communicate with one another. So they're kind of standing in the middle, away and lost from everything that's going on their case. And naturally they don't have a leader. They don't have a guide. They just feel alone. And naturally they get frustrated. And then they're kind of stuck alone with their chronic illness and no answers or guidance. So
misery loves company, right?
This burnout. Yeah. This burnout is a real thing definitely for the patients. So what are some suggestions? I know we dove into this a little bit, which is kind of interesting. What are some suggestions to try to get away from try to avoid the doctor burnout or burnout from too many doctors?
I think that the biggest suggestion that I recommend for people is that they find a provider that they trust and that they can build a relationship with. And really what this allows you to do is when the patient knows the provider and the patient knows the patient. Did I say that right? The patient knows the provider and the provider knows the patient. I think I said that right the first time.
No, you didn't, but it's okay.
Well, thanks. It's the end of the day. At least I caught myself, I guess. They can act as like the quarterback of their care. Okay. So they're going to get the offensive line organized. They're going to get the wide receivers going where they're supposed to, whatever. They're going to call the play. And what that allows you to do is everyone's communicating. And it's the quarterback's job to coordinate with everybody. Now, this allows you to have the person that you trust because you've developed a personal relationship with them to help you outline the course that they think is going to be the most beneficial or the most helpful for you. And it's really linear. It's not easy to do, but in my experience, when you have this, then the patient gets better results and they feel like and here's the thing, even if they don't get better immediately, at least they have someone that's looking at it diligently and they have someone that's dedicated to their case and they feel like someone has enough care and compassion to sit and focus and help them get it figured out versus, well, I don't know, I'm going to send it to this patient or this person. I don't know, I'm going to send it to this specialist.
Getting handed off and handed off. That's true. And even if they're not getting results right away, they're going to hold in for the long haul.
When they feel like they have a team member. Yeah,
they've got a partner in it. They're not alone. They're not abandoned. They're going to hold in and they're going to naturally always do better. So, having one set of trusted eyes to determine the right course of care and an approach is a big thing. So now, as you said, and I know you do this in your clinic as well, as much as you can with the resources you can and the time, et cetera. But this is difficult to do from the doctor side of it. It's very difficult to do.
I think it's difficult from both sides. It's difficult from the provider because it's really time intensive, right? So you're sending a lot of referrals, you're gathering information, you're trying to coordinate everything, but it's also really frustrating for the patient because it's not fast. It's going to take time because every
clinician has other things going on and they're not sitting at their desk or their computer just waiting for the email from Dr. Kolby on patient X.
Yep. So it's difficult because there's a lot of moving pieces, right? You're trying to get all these cogs that are moving at their own rate and pace to fit together to get this machine to run smoothly. And it takes time. I can speak from personal experience where, I don't always get, and I'm guilty of this too, I don't always get the referral sent out as fast as I should, or I don't always get the information from the other provider as quickly as I should, because you have other patients you're trying to help as well, or you have a personal life and you're not trying to live at your place of employment for hours upon hours upon hours every night. So it's time intensive for the provider, but it's also.
And if you're listening to this, we did a podcast on a day in the life of Dr. Kolby. So you get some background.
It's a real doozy. And then, so time intensive for the provider, and also requires a lot of patience from the patient, because they have to wait for all this stuff to come together.
Mm-hmm.
So
there are providers out there that are willing to step up, or have the resources, or I don't know, the incentive. Not every provider has the opportunity to be that quarterback, as with what was explained, but it is possible. It is possible. And hopefully that they can stick around for the long haul, and you only have that, you're only working with one cook, and you don't have too many cooks in the kitchen, because that always leads to chaos. I get people that'll come in and they saw something, on my website or something, and they want to work with me, but they already have two other natural doctors they're working with, and they're on these whole slew of different protocols, and then they want to take me on board, and I want to help, but I got to be very, very specific. Is what is my role in this? And because I might be interpreting data differently than the other doctor's role, and then the patient's not going to know which way to run. And it's going
then on top of that too, if you hop in and you throw in, your ingredients into the mixture,
mm-hmm.
and they get worse or better, then you don't know what it was. Was it you? Right. Was it something else?
Too many variables, too many inputs.
Yeah. So it's just bad science, or junk. It's junk medicine is what it is.
There we did.
We did a podcast on that.
A podcast on junk medicine. I love the name of that. Yeah, it was good. It was very good. So that's something that can be looked at as well. But be careful with it. 20, 30 years of chronic illness, 10 years of chronic illness, my goodness, 5 years of chronic illness can create doctor burnout. And be cautious, because the only one who really suffers from doctor burnout is yourself, is the patient. And it's very hard to pull out of that once you lose confidence.
Absolutely. So if you guys got value out of this content and information, and you want us to keep going with stuff like this, or you'd like to reach out to us directly, make sure you hit like and subscribe, turn on notifications. And again, you can get a hold of us at info@brainstormingwiththedocs.com. Our websites are www.northlakescheropractic.com and www.drgharrison.com. And again, stay tuned.
Yeah. And also, I'm going to add this in. We didn't talk about this, so I'm just going to volunteer us. If anybody is listening to this, watching this, and they not only want to learn more, but there's a topic, there's something that there's pressing, let us know. We will put it in, and we'll do our best to cover that topic. So something to consider. We can
absolutely,
we can answer
absolutely
questions.
More than happy to break down stuff and give
questions
you our 2
as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
All right, Dr. Kolby, that was great, and don't get burnt out there.
I'll do my best. All right, buddy. Sounds good. I'll talk to you later.